This is an AI-generated podcast based on the article Lost, Found, and Called: How Constantine Antonopoulos Built a Coaching Ministry from the Wreckage of Survival Mode, written by Apryl. The article link is in the show notes. Welcome back to Kingdom Factor Collective. I'm your host, Apryl, and today I'm sitting down with Constantine Antonopoulos, a mindset coach, author, and someone whose story honestly stopped me in my tracks when I first heard it. Constantine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, April. I'm really happy to be here. Anytime I get to talk about what God has done, I could go all day. So let's do this.
I love that energy. So let's start at the beginning, or at least what feels like the beginning of this whole journey. You married young, you were operating inside a marriage that wasn't providing the partnership you'd hoped for, raising two kids largely on your own, and at some point you just described it as survival mode. What did that actually feel like from the inside?
It's hard to even articulate fully, but I was doing what I had to do. That's really the best way to put it. I believed in the covenant. I believed in what a marriage was supposed to look like biblically, and I was just dreaming because I was not getting the support I needed. And when you're running on empty like that for years, you start asking God, why is this happening? I thought I did everything right? And the answer doesn't come right away.
But it does come. That question, I thought I did everything right, I think so many people carry that quietly, especially leaders. And you eventually left the marriage, lost the house, rebuilt, and then something interesting happened. You entered this season of deep isolation. Can you unpack that? Because you reframe it in a way that I think is really counterintuitive.
Right. So at first, I honestly thought something was wrong with me. Like, is this depression? Is this just exhaustion? And looking back now, I understand it completely differently. I was going through isolation for a reason. In those moments, I spent a lot of time in prayer and medication. And that's when the downloads started coming, like ideas, impressions, insights. During prayer, during drives, during random conversations with strangers who somehow always ended up telling me their problems. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And actually, that detail about strangers telling you their troubles, I love that. Your daughter Noelle even called it out. She basically said, "Mom, you need to go out there and use that." What was that moment like?
Oh, that moment. So here's what happened. I'm standing in a grocery store checkout line, minding my own business, and the man at the register just starts opening up about his struggles at home. I hadn't asked anything. And Noelle had seen stuff like this happen over and over, and she finally just said it out loud. Mom, you need to go out there and use that. And I think that was the nudge I hadn't let myself believe yet, that this was actually a calling.
That's interesting because sometimes it takes someone close to us to name what we can't name for ourselves. So from that nudge, Lost and Sold was born, your coaching business, and you also wrote your first book from those downloads. Tell me about that process. How do you go from impressions and ideas to an actual manuscript?
So I started writing them down as they came, and I told God, I literally said, I don't have a clear plan, but I feel called and I'm willing to let you direct it. And I said, whoever you want me to connect with, I'm going to leave it up to you. You're my boss. And out of that came my first book, off the top of my head, from the bottom of my heart. And I was very intentional. I didn't want it to be, oh my goodness, victim energy. I wanted to take what I had been through and offer a different lens, a more positive perspective on how you can see difficulty.
That's a really important distinction. And then your second book, okay, this one I have to ask about because it involves a story you held close for nearly 3 decades. The story about Noelle. Can you share that?
I still get goosebumps every single time I tell this. So before I was even pregnant, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I saw 2 pink balloons suspended in the air of my bedroom. And I heard a voice tell me I was going to have a girl. Weeks later, on April 1st, April Fool's Day, I felt prompted to take a pregnancy test. I was pregnant. Noelle was born in December, and in the delivery room, I saw what I can only describe as the presence of Jesus standing in the doorway, like a quiet assurance that I was not alone. Wow. And then 4 years later, Noelle says something to you. She comes running from the living room, sandwich forgotten, full attention, and she says, I chose you. I was on Jesus's lap when I was going to be born. He asked me to look down and see who I wanted to be my mommy. I picked you. And then she described a detail, a Chinese baby boy who was born just before her. Apryl, I had never spoken of that. Not to her, not to my mother in any conversation she could have overheard. The detail was precise. There's no ordinary explanation for it.
I mean, that's extraordinary. And you turned that into a children's book, I Chose You Mommy, with Bible verses and illustrations and a prayer. But it wasn't a smooth road getting it out there, right? Some schools passed, some gift shops passed.
Yes, and you know what? I took it to God. I just said, God, I put this story out there. It is my true story, and I wanted to touch people. You need to help me bring it to the right people. And he did. It's now sold at a Greek Orthodox monastery in Wisconsin. I don't control where it lands, he does. And that's been the whole journey, honestly. Obedience over outcomes.
Obedience over outcomes. I want to sit with that for a second, because you helped people on LinkedIn at no charge. You wrote when the writing wasn't producing income. You published stories that not everyone was ready to receive. That requires a real theology of trust. How do you maintain that posture when the results are slow or invisible?
That's a great question. I think it comes back to believing that purpose is not a destination you arrive at. It's a faithfulness you practice. God is still preparing me. I don't think you're ever done. It might not be something people are ready for right now, but I have it out there. The downloads keep coming as long as you stay surrendered enough to receive them. And when I'm tempted to rush or force something, I just go back to that simple prayer, Thy will be done. He has a way of working it out.
Constantine, this has been such a rich conversation. If someone is listening to this right now from inside their own survival mode, wondering if the calling they sense is real or just wishful thinking, what's the one thing you'd want them to hear?
I'd say consider what story you've been holding back, the one that feels too personal, too risky, too unlikely to resonate. And consider whether the isolation you're in right now might be preparation rather than abandonment. Start with a conversation with God. Ask Him to direct your calendar, to filter who comes your way, and then just be obedient to the small steps. Write the post, help the person in the DM, tell the story you've been holding for 29 years. The business grows from the obedience, not the other way around.
That's such a powerful word. Constantine, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. All of it. The link to the original article is in the show notes, along with more about Constantine's work and her books. And if this episode moved you, share it with someone in their own season of rebuilding. We'll see you next time on Kingdom Factor Collective.